So just imagine Walmart has $3 billion of payments come in, and the regulator comes around and says, well, who'd those payments come from? Because maybe a bomb went off or some fraud happened, and they say, well, we don't know. So with a tokenized deposit, you're always going to be able, with due process, with privacy protections, be able to track it back to a real person. We call it personhood. It's actually grounded in biometrics. If you go around the world, whether it's Argentina or Iran, what they have stuffed under the bed are dollars. They love dollars. It's like English. If it was good enough for Jesus, it's good enough for everyone. So everybody wants to use dollars. They don't want to use creepy Mark Zuckerberg Libra. I hope with other platforms, including crypto, that crypto doesn't end up being controlled by governments or corporations. And I still see a healthy indicators that that's the case. But you can't take anything for granted. You got to fight for your right to party.
That's right. We got to fight for our right to XRP. What's going on, family and friends? It's day one of the XRP Las Vegas conference, and I'm standing next to the lead investor of Vast Bank, Greg Kidd, also one of the earliest employees of Ripple Labs, one of the main sponsors of the XRP Las Vegas conference. Greg, how you doing today, sir?
I'm fine. Thanks for having me back.
Well, it's good to have you back. Thanks for pedaling your road bike all the way here to downtown Las Vegas. How was the ride?
The ride's pretty good. I got a place out in Blue Diamond. If you haven't mountain biked there, you're really missing out.
I am missing out. I haven't been on two wheels in quite some time, so maybe I'll join you one day. Greg, from your seat, sir, being at the lead investor of Vast Bank, where you guys have pioneered deposit tokens, what type of utility does deposit tokens actually unlock compared to the legacy payment rails of today?
So deposit tokens use the same technology as stablecoins, but they have the protections, both in terms of compliance and consumer protections that traditional banks do. So it's a hybrid in between. So you can send it just like any stablecoin, but if something goes wrong, you get your money back. So Reg E, all those protections are built in.
For those in the audience that actually are not even that may not be well versed in stablecoins, can you also describe the differentiation between that and a dollar? Because with a deposit token with a stablecoin, you could potentially port those to another platform, move that liquidity around from an uphold to then maybe a platform within Ripple's domain and beyond.
So the difference is a tokenized deposit. It could appear in a Wells Fargo wallet. It could appear in a MetaMask wallet. The difference is it always has identity. You can't have FDIC insurance unless you know who you're insuring. And so a stable coin, well, you could have a paper bag on your head and hold that stable coin. So they both can move around 24/7. They're both on the blockchain, but one has identity. The other may or may not.
With a Circle out there, the creator of USDC, which is a stable coin, what type of implications would that create not knowing your customer who's using the stable coin?
So just imagine Walmart has $3 billion of payments come in, and the regulator comes around and says, well, who'd those payments come from? Because maybe a bomb went off or some fraud happened, and they say, well, we don't know. So with a tokenized deposit, you're always going to be able, with due process, with privacy protections, be able to track it back to a real person. We call it personhood. It's actually grounded in biometrics. So it's a combination of biometrics, kind of the Sam Altman world, with blockchain, bunch of AI to keep an eye on everything, and identity. You put it all together. We think that's the future of banking and the future of the dollar and the future of money.
Now, to that comment, why is identity so important within this new framework? Could it still be pushed to the side and extrapolated but still used, or does it need to be within the core infrastructure that you guys are building?
Well, you can do it either way. There's a bunch of people doing things without identity, but CZ had to spend a little time in the big house over that. But if the money is flowing either for fraudulent purposes or is ending up in North Korea or a couple other countries that are in a spicy part of the world, you may want to know who's behind it. We call it ultimate beneficial owner. And if you're big institutions dealing with big money, there may be a time when there's a knock on the door and those guys with guns and badges show up and they want to know who your customers are. And you can either say, not so much, or here's the list. Thank you very much.
Man, Greg, you're a wealth of knowledge, sir. How did you achieve such excellence? How did you get to this point, sir?
Well, it all started with bike messaging, but learned a lot about text messages and payments. That became Twitter and Square. Learned about Ripple at a poker game and got in early. But look, in this past time, I moonlighted at the Federal Reserve. So it's all the big Death Star combined with this new technology, blockchain. And we're just really taking the best of both.
Yeah.
And so day job, night job, I'm living the dream.
You and me both. I love what I'm doing. I get to engage with people like you, Greg, but more importantly, learn from people like you. Brad Garlinghouse, David Schwartz, even the everyday people in this room right here. It's just, these have become family members. It's really great to have everybody in the room right now because this is community. Now, with growing Vast Bank, Ripple Labs, from nothing, a community is very important. How did you guys achieve that? What was your approach to that, if you don't mind me asking?
Well, look, it goes all the way back to Arthur Britto taught me that there could be an alternate way of doing money in the world. That money, I love banking, but I'm not particularly fond of banks, even though I bought one or two. But you could build a ledger that was 24/7, there was a seat at the table for everyone in the world. And so getting that, and now backwards integrating that into the kind of the stodgy world of banking, it's kind of a perfect fit for me. So no shirt, no suit and tie today, but I'm doing both worlds. So I still have one leg in crypto and blockchain, but the other leg is getting the Fed and the central banks all around the world comfortable with this. And we're kind of asking permission, but not really. As I've always said, I'm willing to come through the front door as long as I don't have to.
There's a common theme of this, not rebelliousness, but just going against the grain, but doing it in a professional manner. Especially when you're dealing with banks, regulatory frameworks, you got to work within standardized means and governance. But to your point, maybe you kick down the front door.
Well, look, like I said, I love banking, but there's a lot of rent seekers in this world, and we know who they are. We'll work with them, Visa and MasterCard, Google and Apple, the big banks. But, we kind of think banking and money could be bottom up, and they could stand a little competition and a little innovation. They've been kind of sitting on the top of the can for a little too long, in my opinion. If you go around the world, whether it's Argentina or Iran, what they have stuffed under the bed are dollars. They love dollars. It's like English. If it was good enough for Jesus, it's good enough for everyone. So everybody wants to use dollars. They don't want to use creepy Mark Zuckerberg Libra. And so Ripple showed me that dollars could run on chain. Before Ripple, all there was Bitcoin on chain. But Ripple was the first to have an issuer and a currency. And it's from Ripple that I learned in the XRP ledger that we can move dollars, good old-fashioned dollars, on this new technology.
Now, what would you say to a Tim Draper who was at the Bitcoin conference? I interviewed him actually at Bitco's High Roller. He was filming a short series there, and he was during our interview. Which thank you again, Tim. I really appreciate your time. But he was very rah-rah-rahing Bitcoin and talking about how it's an improvement from the previous legacy system, and said progress always wins. And so I kind of asked him, well, then what are your thoughts on XRP? And he said Chris Larson's doing a really great job of getting his token adopted. What are your thoughts on that comment?
Well, so I'm running for Congress again, and we have this distinction. I'm going to make this distinction between Bitcoin and Ripple, but like in Nevada, where it's pretty dry, we say, whiskey's for drinking and water's for fighting. And in the crypto world, Bitcoin is a great digital asset. It's digital gold. But if you're going to transact and move it around, that's where things like XRP and Tether come in. Yeah. It's for drinking. We want to have it move around and have velocity. So it just has a different focus than Bitcoin. Hats off to Bitcoin, but hats off to XRP for showing all the other applications besides being digital gold.
Yeah. Greg, I'm going to go back to our last conversation. You brought up the Fed. I've been doing a lot of traveling from New York to Denver to Texas, all over. Every Fed building I've seen has been under reconstruction. What's going on with that?
Hey, but the building I worked at, the one behind, that's still the same crappy 70s building as all. It does have, people don't know, in the basement, it has 2 squash courts, and the Fed is the only government organization that has a tennis court. right on the Fed premises. They don't talk about that. So, okay, Mr. Powell's been in some trouble. You know, the Fed is the Fed. We don't want the United States to be like Argentina. So I'm a big Fed backer for independence. It's one of our crown jewels. And I'm really glad that also innovation with the Genius Act and now maybe the Clarity Act is onshoring back to the US. I'm glad to see that Ripple and XRP is staying US centric. Obviously it'll be international, but it's great to see the US recommitting to being a leader in this rather than a laggard.
Yeah. With regulations being conducive for a stablecoin like RLUSD, what type of impact do you think that will have on money flows through the XRP ledger?
Well, there's just going to be two kinds of stablecoins, the ones that are issued here in America and the ones that are not. And so Tether's going to have to make a decision. Are they going to come onshore? You know, Ripple's already going to be here. And so is Circle and a few others. Look, I'm a dollar hawk. I want to see that innovation happen here in the US. I want it to go everywhere in the world, but you know, I'm a pro-regulation guy. Even if I am bottom up, I want the regulation because I want the consumer protection. I know I'm a little bit of a nervous Nelly about that, but I think consumer protection is part of making this go mainstream. And in my particular case with tokenized deposits, it's FDIC insurance.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of people would be pretty comfortable with a stable coin issued in the US by a reputable company like Ripple.
Yeah. I'm going to ask a tough question. I've asked Hugo Filion at Flare, others that are at the helm of their businesses, what would it take for this to fail? All of this that's in the room that we see today, all this progress, all this growth, all these people believing in something greater than themselves, for all this to go away, what would it take for this to fail?
Well, if blockchain just becomes a tool of Big Brother, if you take it and you combine it with AI and identity so that everything we spend money on, we lose all of our privacy, and there's basically this social score we have, then we'll be working for blockchain, just like we'll be working for AI, rather than AI and blockchain working for us. We got to keep this thing bottom up. Even if there's big players, it's got to be something that empowers people rather than turns people into ants.
Yeah. Man, I don't want to bring Tim Draper up again, but he had made a comment and said, right after I asked him about XRP and such, he said, but be wary, Ray, of buying assets which the government already owns. What are your thoughts on that comment?
Well, there's truth to that. There was this thing called the financial crisis, and you know, don't always trust Big Brother. Whether Big Brother is big government or big companies, we still don't know who Satoshi is, right? So this is one of those revolutions that came bottom up. And we're going to have the same question with AI. Like I've invested in something called Gonka. It's decentralized AI. It asks the question is, does AI have to come top down or bottom up? And I believe America, if you go back to its foundings, is a bottom up kind of place. That's what makes us different from Europe and China and the rest of the world. So I'm hoping it's a bottom up solution.
Yeah. Greg, I'd love to tap into your relationship with Jack Dorsey, the creator and founder of Twitter, and now I believe Square, which is now Block. Do you mind talking about maybe some of the progress within his domain, and then also follow it up with what do you think the future of X looks like now under the care, custody, and control of Elon, who's mentioned that they want to make it a super app. So how about let's split this in two questions. Give me an update on Jack, and let's talk about the future of social media platforms like X.
Right. So so Jack has got X or Twitter in his rearview mirror. He is committed to self-sovereignty, bottom up, distributed everything. They just launched Divine, which is a relaunch of Vine, 6-second vids. Jack's behind that. It's real old school. It's not algos. So Jack's a purist at heart. Elon, not so much. And so Elon's taken over Twitter. It's no longer a public forum. It's a private megaphone. And look, it made true the saying we had early on at Twitter, that Twitter is too important to be left to Twitter. And Twitter became commercial, and then it became, biased and stuff. And you're allowed to do that in private enterprise. I thought Twitter should have been a public good.
Yeah.
A public good. It should be like a public forum. It is no longer that, but it's still very powerful.
Wow.
I hope with other platforms, including crypto, that crypto doesn't end up being controlled by governments or corporations, and I still see a healthy indicators that that's the case.
Man.
But you can't take anything for granted.
Yeah.
You got to fight for your right to party.
That's right. We got to fight for our right to XRP. At what point in your professional career, Greg, did this become no longer theoretical for you? This became legitimate, and you had full on conviction.
So it happened fairly early on. When I was able to issue a debit card, this is very early on. It was actually when I was at Ripple. We did this both at Ripple and at Coinbase at the same time. We had a debit card and you could spend XRP and you could spend Bitcoin. So once you knew that that saying money can't buy love, but for everything else there's MasterCard, and you realized that you could use this stuff, and then all those people are like, well, what can you do with crypto? And I'm like, I bought this house or I bought this car. Then it started to feel really, really real.
Yeah.
And when you start buying companies, and now we bought Vast Bank and we're buying a bank in Europe, and they're like, what'd you buy this with? And I'm like, crypto. Well, then you feel like you kind of arrived.
Yeah.
You feel like Jed Clampett and the Beverly Hillbillies, right?
Yeah, baby. Oh, baby. Oh, baby. You can stop now. Yeah, baby. Oh, no. Now he's hooked on show business. Oh, baby. Oh, baby.
Yeah, didn't you use Bitcoin to buy Vast Bank?
So I used a combination, including some XRP, and we've capitalized the public company we're doing with crypto. Even though we're doing the US dollar, the capitalization, the risk capital is in crypto.
Yeah.
And we'll continue to do that.
Man, Greg, you're doing some great work, sir, and you must be a busy man. I actually can't believe that this interview is probably, 12 minutes long? I don't think you stand in the same place for that long. Usually when you come to these events, you're back on a plane within minutes.
I will be back on a plane today, so I'm in and out today.
Oh, you are?
Yes, I am.
Are you going to the bank that you're buying in Europe?
No, I'm going because I'm running for office, and I now have my opponent dropped out. Now I got 26 new opponents.
Oh, wow. And what's your focus of the campaign? I believe you mentioned it even earlier. Access, a seat at the table. What's important for your campaign, sir?
Seat at the table. There's a lot of things that folks like you and I take for granted in terms of accessing money and all sorts of other privileges that the rest of the world doesn't get. We don't want it to work just in the US. We want it to work around the world. 95% of the people aren't here. So we want to bring the dollar. We want to bring the ability to have consumer protection to everyone else in the world. We want everyone to use the dollar.
Yeah. Powerful words, and this is where I would like to conclude our conversation. Is that the end ultimate goal? Are you trying to recreate money? What do you want your legacy to be, Greg? And here's the thing, because the very first time I interviewed you, when I was as a customer of Link2 and I joined that virtual webinar, I don't have much to ask. You guys are the smartest guys in the world. So my inquiry was, what traits did your parents instill in you that you carry today? And my question is, what do you want your legacy to be? What do you want to leave behind, either for your kids, for the world, for the new financial system? What do you want your legacy to be, sir?
So I always go back to Forrest Gump. He had an amazing life, and he has that scene where he's like, life's a box of chocolates. You never know what you're going to get. But I want that to be a positive thing. Not that you never know what you're going to get because bad things are going to happen to you. I've been very lucky in life. I mean, I've worked hard, but I want everybody else to have that same opportunity. It gives me great pleasure to see people feel empowered rather than treated like ants top down. I want the world to be bottom up. It's an American ethos. It's a great life to live. Yeah. I want everyone to have as much fun as I'm having.
And you know what, Greg? I believe you've created a ripple effect, because even for me, what I'm doing right now is something far completely different than I was when I was being a busy bee or a working ant, selling business insurance and just going in 9 to 5, doing the same routine every day. And now I get to, fly all around the world, interview legends like yourself and talk about the future of finance, because I was fortunate enough to stumble upon all the great developments that you guys have birthed for the world. So thank you so much, Greg.
Thank you. Hope to see you next year.
I hope to see. Before I let you go, is there any major updates or news that you'd be willing to share before you go on stage or before I let you go?
Vote. I'm a politician now, so I gotta ask everybody for their vote. I'm in Nevada. I don't know how many people here are from my district, but I need your vote.
Yep. You heard him, folks. I'll be sure to copy the links to your campaign in the comments and descriptions below, as well as USBC and all the wonderful things you're working on within your domain. Greg, thank you for sharing your time with me, sir.
Thank you.
Safe travels.
Take care.